Hello, welcome to Ecology lecture video number 4. Here's where we're going to start getting into a little bit. We're talking about San Diego a little bit today and our biome or the geographic area that we live in. And we're going to talk about some species interactions in this lecture video today. So let's begin by defining what a biome is. A biome, it is a huge area on Earth and it has a specific climate. And because it has a specific climate, it has specific producers there. And the producers dictate which animals end up living in that particular area. So the producers determine the organisms that are going to be there, which consumers will be there. 9 major biomes on Earth. We're not going to cover them all. I just want you to be aware of what they're called. Chaparral is our biome. That's the only one we're going to go over. The coniferous forest, cone-bearing trees. This is where you guys like to go, maybe skiing or snowboarding. Deciduous, this is those trees that lose their leaves. You see them in maple leaves. East Coast in Canada is where you see them native to. Desert biomes just east of us where we live here, or desert. Chaparral is we're not quite a desert, but we're kind of desert-like a little bit. Freshwater biomes, water without salt in it. Grasslands and savannas. Usually in the central parts of countries, this is where we grow our food in the United States. Marine, saltwater biomes. Tropical rainforests, where are these found? Around the equator on the Earth, and tundras, cold ones. All right, so these are the 9 major biomes on Earth. We are going to cover ours, only San Diego's, Chaparral. If you look at these pictures, it's like looking out a window in your backyard somewhere, and look up in the hills nearby, the rolling hills, you'll see this type of vegetation. We generally call it brush. And what do we have here in San Diego? We get a lot of brush fire. The stuff gets dried out during certain seasons, and it's very flammable. All right. You might see some scattered cone-bearing trees. We have mild, rainy winters. Our summers are hot and dry. We get a lot of fires. And this particular biome that we have, it is unique to coastal communities. All right. So in the Mediterranean Sea, you might some people call it a Mediterranean climate. Mediterranean climate is similar to ours. It's at the same latitude as we are located on the planet, and they are coastal communities like us. And if you notice, here's the equator. This is where it's tropical, so we're going to have rainforest. Look, tropical forest, the green is right there, and we are right here, this little red area, Chaparral. And if you notice, it's over here in the Mediterranean area. Specifically, it's at around 30 degrees north latitude, and it's in coastal communities. All right, that's where you'll probably notice we're going to start seeing some deserts nearby too. So inland areas generally are desert-like, but if you're coastal, you become more chaparral. So if you look at us, we're chaparral. Just east of us, deserts. All right, so generally where we're located, this is what dictates our climate. Animals and plants in the biome, you've probably seen a lot of these around. These are found in our backyards: the rabbits, the quail, coyotes, lizards. All kinds of lizards, by the way. Snakes, squirrels, red-tailed hawks are common. They're out hunting for these little mice and different squirrels, whatever they can find. Jays, scrub jays, skunks, the western rattlesnake, western fence. This guy's everywhere. You'll start seeing a bunch of these soon. These are the plants. Look at them. Toyon, manzanita, scrub oak, chemis. Look at this. Now, vegetation. Now, our vegetation is adapted. Our plants here in our biome, they don't mind fires, actually. So they have adapted to fires. What does that mean? Well, their seeds actually are designed in a way to sprout from the heat. It enables certain seeds to sprout. A lot of these seeds are unable to sprout without a fire, so it enables them to germinate their seeds. They're used to fire. What causes natural fires in these communities? Lightning. If these areas are dry and then you have lightning strike, boom, you have a fire. Common places where you would have natural fires that would occur. So that over time, these plants have adapted to that particular circumstance. All right. Some plants in this biome have flammable chemicals that they produce. Okay. Excuse me. These plants, as they burn, are very flammable, is what I meant to say. They don't produce flammable. They are very flammable, specifically because they're dry. All right. Kids playing with fires and matches. We have brush fires all the time. San Diego has major fire problems. So after the fire, a lot of these plants, their roots stick around and then they come back to life. The fire puts a lot of carbon and a lot of minerals that are needed and nutrition back in the soil. So it actually allows them to do very well after a fire. All right, now we're moving on to species interactions. We're going to talk about certain species interactions, and that will wrap up this lecture. So let's talk. First off, there's this thing called a keystone species. And a keystone is it's an important part of a wall. If you remove a keystone from a wall, the whole wall will fall. So they call a specific species a keystone species because it has a huge effect and impact on the community that it lives in. Keystone species are very commonly top predators, like high-level feeders in a food chain. And I'll explain to you why the top of a food chain is very important. Even though there isn't as many of them in abundancy at the top of the food chain, the ones that are there have a job. Their job is to control the population of the food levels, of the feeding levels below it. If those levels or those populations are not controlled, then they will grow too rapidly, and then they will eat everything below them and destroy the environment by overconsumption. So let's give you an example of the sea otter and how the sea otter is a keystone species. Well, they feed on these things called sea urchins, these little purpley things down here, sea urchins, all right? Well, sea urchins feed on kelp. So what did a lot of people do? Well, a lot of people said, let's hunt these sea otters to the point of almost extinction. And they removed the sea otters. Why sea otters? Because they were huntable, and people were finding it fun to hunt them, and they were at the top, more towards the top of the chain in this particular environment. So people were hunting them. They removed them. When sea otters were removed, the sea urchin population blew up. It went crazy because the sea otters kept them in check. Now there's nothing keeping the sea urchin population in check. There's a population explosion here. So what did they end up then doing? Overgrazing and destroying the kelp, which is the base of all the food chains. Once you destroy the base of the food chains, now you're going to have a problem going up the food chain. So over time, a lot of these sea urchins, they're going to then die because there isn't enough food to feed them because their population explosion created an imbalance that destroyed the food chain. Okay, so keystone species, when you remove them, you have major imbalance. And we say it creates a cascade down the different feeding levels. A bunch of issues occur as a result of the removal of a top predator or keystone species in this case. There's another relationship among species, predator-prey relationship. This is predation, eating something. All right, you have a cheetah, you have a gazelle, it is getting eaten or it's getting chased. Hasn't quite caught it yet in this picture. So predation is a very common relationship in ecology. Things need to eat, so something is going to get eaten. The prey gets eaten, the predator is the hunter. More relationships. Symbiosis simply means organisms living together or living near each other or living within each other in some cases. All right. There's different kinds of symbiosis that you need to be aware of. The first one we're going to talk about is parasitism. Everybody, we hear the word parasite, you're like freaked out. You don't want anything to do with a parasite. Okay. Parasites are awful. Nobody wants one. What happens when someone has a parasite? Well, the parasite is benefiting. All right. While the host is getting harmed. So in this relationship, one benefits, one gets hurt. Different kinds of parasites. Ectoparasites outside of the body, endoparasites inside of the body. All right. What does that mean? Well, let's look at the ectoparasites first. All right. So aphids, things that grow on plants, things like that. Leeches are on the outside. Fleas and ticks are on the outside. Mosquitoes. Mistletoe. People don't realize mistletoe grows. It's a plant parasite. It's on the surface of the plant. We kiss, and we're supposed to kiss someone during Christmas when we're underneath the mistletoe, but it's a plant parasite. That doesn't make much sense to me, but that's the custom that people have gotten used to. Endoparasites, parasites inside of the host body. Tapeworms, protists, little things that live within our bodies. This would be a brain-eating amoeba. You get them in a freshwater environment that you swallow the water. You hear about happening to children. Then it swims up and up through their nervous system, gets in their sinuses, it gets in their brain, and next thing you know, starts laying eggs or doing something crazy or multiplying and becoming a major problem. Hosts of defenses against parasites. Parasites have been around forever. We learned in our previous evolution chapter that they have co-evolved with each other. Skin is protection. It prevents things from entering tears. prevent things from entering the eye. Saliva catches things before they enter your system. Mucus catches things with its stickiness. Our immune system helps kill things before they make us sick. So there's all kinds of things that help protect us against parasites that we as humans have evolved in this way, and other organisms have host defenses also. Mutualism, this type of symbiosis is where both organisms benefit. It's like a mutualistic relation. Everybody's happy in a mutualistic relation. The most common one you hear about, there's lots of them. The most common one you hear about are the birds and the bees, or the pollinators and the plants. The insects, butterflies, birds, hummingbirds, bees, they land on flowering plants. Flowering plants have pollen, which is the sperm of the plant. Then they carry it from plant to plant, flying around, and they help fertilize plants, help them. Basically, the reason they call it the birds and the bees is how the plants have sex. They move their pollen from plant to plant, and it helps give the plants genetic variety. So it is huge. We need them to pollinate so that we can have fruits and vegetables that we love to eat. The pollinators and the bees, they're suffering, though. A lot of things that humans are doing are killing them right now. So it's not very good. So this is the most common one. We have a mutualistic relationship with the bacteria inside of our gut or in our intestines. The bacteria, they do some things for us. They help us with digestion. They produce some vitamins for us. We give them a place to live, and we feed them, and they help us. When things are out of balance and they're not happy, we have problems with our bowel movements. So mutualistic relation with bacteria inside of our bodies. Here's an example of a mutualistic relation between algae and fungus. It's a lichen. What does it do? The algae produces food. It's like a photosynthesizer. The fungus attaches it to the rock and gives it a place to live. And so then the algae feeds the fungus, and the fungus gives the algae a place to live. This is what forms before soil forms. You get lichens. They break down the rocks, and the rocks turn into soil, and the soil will allow trees to form. This is how islands form. This is a dental fish, or the wrasse. What does it do? It feeds basically off of parasites that they're on their teeth, and they get cleaned. Basically, they get food and they get their teeth cleaned. Everybody's happy in this situation. All right. Over here, these are the little cleaner shrimp. They clean. In this case, it's cleaning this eel that's poking out of the rock. They get food and they get cleaned off. It's like a hygienic situation here. Now we'll talk about commensalism. Now, this is where one organism benefits while the other is not affected. All right. So you've probably seen Shark Week before, and you've seen a bunch of little fish attached to the shark, and you're wondering, why isn't that shark ticked off? Well, the shark doesn't even probably know that they're there, doesn't notice them. It has no idea that they're not even really affecting it in any way, shape, or form. You would think they'd affect its ability to swim, but no, this guy's way strong. He's strong. He can move through the water with no problems. So he gets no effect. But what do these guys? They get protection. The things that want to eat them aren't going to go near them. This guy wouldn't even probably eat them. They're too small, not enough energy. He's probably not going to chase down a small fish like that, because it would take so much energy to chase it that eating it wouldn't even be worthwhile for the shark. So the shark would, in turn, is looking for something bigger. So they're getting protection. This guy's getting nothing out of it. In this case, the cattle walks around and it loosens up the soil, and these little birds, these egrets, they are getting a bunch of food insects that are popping up. So there's a hangout. This guy's like, what are you guys doing? Just hanging out? Yep. They're getting food. He just has people to hang out with. So he really doesn't benefit in this. This is a plant parasite called an epiphyte. So some plants grow out of the trunks of other trees. This is common in rainforest areas. The tree, the bark, nothing is being harmed. There's no harm to the tree. So the tree has no effect, but this other plant, it has a place to anchor itself to. All right, we will stop there.